Mr. President, aren't you afraid for yourself today?
Afraid?
We lived through the period of Thomas Sankara, who is somewhat your model, as many compare you to him through your ideas, your behavior, and your choices. We know how that ended.
Yes, you are right. And it's the question everyone asks. And it's actually the phobia of the Burkinabe people. When they think about it, they are always afraid for me. For myself, I am not afraid. Fear, we do not know it. We have faced death several times. We have been close to it. We do not know. God has made it so that we are alive. We give thanks to God. So fear, we do not know it. But we have analyzed the past. In certain aspects, perhaps, President Thomas Sankara made mistakes. When he said, for example, let friends betray friendship, it is not up to us to betray friendship. I think that phrase prevailed.
For you, he should have been on the offensive.
We will no longer make the same mistakes. That is certain. And imperialism, as he said, is a very bad student. When it is driven out, it returns with the same methods. We are vigilant, so we will not let the same mistakes happen again. Unfortunately, over time, the organization has lost those values. And today the situation is clear. I think that for more than a decade, the sister republics of Mali and Niger have been at war against terrorism. And in Burkina, it's been nearly a decade that we have been at war. This organization, which was supposed to create mutual aid and solidarity, we have never received any help from this organization. No soldiers, no logistics, no compassion.
But Mr. President, we feel like saying we understand that lately the relations have been particularly difficult. That with what has happened, the coup d'etat that have occurred in these different states you just mentioned, Mali, Niger, and Burkina, you might want to leave. And people are saying, isn't this a reaction to the fact that they don't accept that you allowed coup d'etat, that you are leaving and saying to yourself, well, since they don't accept it, we're leaving?
Coup d'etat are not done because we want them. It's this way of seeing things that needs to change. You agree with me that having these states in crisis to carry out a coup d'etat and take responsibility is very burdensome. But if we do it, it's because we have a desire to lead our people towards a certain sovereignty, because we know the origin of this crisis. And I think we should be supported. People are proud to cite that there are so many millions of displaced people in those regions. But what are you doing to help them? Nothing.
Do you feel that the military is more likely to solve these problems than politicians, civilians? Is that your feeling?
Anyone could do it.
But how do you explain that it's the military who are taking charge and saying we don't want civilians anymore?
No, the military didn't say we don't want civilians anymore. It's out of a sense of patriotism. When the nation is in peril, at some point, important decisions must be made. If it happens that it was the military who had the courage to make this decision, well, that's how it is. In any case, whether civilians or military, we are all children of this country. And anyone who is driven by this feeling of being able to liberate their country could do it. So, it's not a question of being military. Elsewhere, the military has succeeded. And here too, the military can indeed succeed.
So, Mr. President, what do you say to the ECOWAS leaders who say they are leaving because we said we don't want coup leaders among us?
There are many coup leaders among them. So it's not a question of coup leaders, it's just a facade.
When you say coup leaders, do you mean civilian coup leaders?
There are military coup leaders within ECOWAS who today claim to be Democrats. And there are civilians too. There are worse than coup leaders. There are those who kill, who silence their people in silence. ECOWAS turns a blind eye, a deaf ear. There are plenty of coup leaders within ECOWAS.
So Mr. President says, okay, we are leaving ECOWAS with immediate effect. Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali. We are leaving with immediate effect. Mr. President, this concerns a lot of people. What about the movement of people, your populations who are in an ECOWAS country, that you are leaving overnight. How is this going to happen exactly? Because the texts say it takes at least a year to implement all this. But here, you are saying no, it's over now. It's over now.
Yes. First you say the texts say, but they themselves have never respected their texts. It depends on who you are dealing with. That's what we have noticed. The sanctions imposed on Niger, they don't exist anywhere in the texts. So the first ones to violate these texts are these so-called Democrats. We are leaving, but we remain Pan-African. Anyone in Africa, an African who wants to come to Burkina, is welcome in their home, in principle.
But in the opposite direction, it's going to be complicated. Someone who is within the AES, we will talk about the AES in a moment. Someone who is within the AES, we can tell them they can no longer go to Burkina, they can no longer go to Côte d'Ivoire, they can no longer go to Ghana. It becomes a bit more complicated for those who do their business there.
We will see, and we will know what measures to take at an appropriate time.
Is this departure from ECOWAS well thought out, Mr. President?
Of course, very well thought out.
It's not a whim. It's not out of anger.
If it were out of anger, we would have done it a long time ago. I think we took the time to analyze the situation, to weigh many things, and finally, to decide. So, if it were a whim from the very first moments of certain sanctions, the people have been quite resilient, it must be said. They have suffered. So, during that time, we could have decided in anger. Now, we have taken the time to observe, to analyze the situation, and to convince ourselves of our strengths before deciding.
And you took everyone by surprise. Another element in this, let's say, this new way of shaping West Africa, the AES, the Alliance of Sahel States. Mr. President, is the AES viable? On paper, it's very, very appealing, but is it viable?
You know very well that it is more than viable. You know, for a long time, our people have been kept in a certain philosophy, always making us believe that we can't do anything without others. Today, our mission is to awaken consciousness. You are doing it very well, by the way.
Yes.
I appreciate it a lot. We need to awaken consciousness for the youth to realize what they have at home. An organization like this, you first need to realize its strengths, weigh its weaknesses, and after this analysis, you decide. The AES is very viable. Whether in terms of
the economies, Mr. President, if I may, these are economies that are very integrated. You produce the same thing, you do exactly the same thing. Who will sell to whom? How is it going to trade? And what do we do about the fact that these are not countries with at least an opening to the sea?
Numbers are one thing. The economy too. You know, we have been here for a very short time. But the economy has been, I would say, somewhat torn apart by past regimes. Otherwise, we should have very strong economies today. That's what I say when analyzing our strengths. We realize that we shouldn't be at this stage. We should be much further along. When you consider the AES in terms of population, in terms of area, we are doing very well. In terms of production, normally the AES states should not import anything regarding agricultural products, the food. Today we are aware of this and we are doing everything to ensure that we do not import anything regarding what we consume. In terms of wealth, whether natural, when I say natural wealth, there are underground resources, but there are also those on the surface. Everywhere, we hear that Africans are dying of hunger, thirst, and so on. Projects invented here and there, for example, to provide us with drinking water. The AES is a large reserve of underground and even surface water. In terms of mineral resources, we have nothing to envy from anyone. And in nature, when you take products like, I like to say, shea butter, is a natural wealth. We did not plant it. It is God who gave it, but it is very rich. People take it and transform it, so we are aware of our potential. The AES has nothing to envy from anyone. For you, the AES can be self-sufficient. An integrated system that functions normally, perfectly.
Mr. President, when we look at the approach that has just been undertaken by these three states, very concretely, we hear everywhere that there is a need for them to be working with others on a subject that is the most important today, or security. I want to ask, Mr. President, today you have been here for some time already. It's been more than a year. What is your assessment in the field of security? Before we talk about these three states, and in terms of security, in your case in Burkina Faso, a good part of the territory is still in the hands of terrorists. What have you been able to do since you've been here in that area?
Very well. It is actually the priority for me. As you said, these terrorists kill, burn, displace populations, and seize lands. But I can tell you right now, as I mentioned recently, there is no part of the territory where we want to go and cannot go.
Today you can go across the entire territory?
Everywhere. The territories that were under control, if we can say so, for 2, 3, 4 years, we are setting foot there.
Yet there is talk of more attacks than before, when there were foreign armies on the territory.
Yes. Are you sure? More attacks, that's relative. Today we are on the offensive in most areas. We are no longer in a defensive posture. We are going towards the enemy, we are seeking the enemy. When we decided to take our destiny into our own hands, as they say, it's quite an important and very courageous decision. And when you decide like that, all the sleeper cells wake up at once. And that's when you realize the magnitude of the terrorism situation. We realized it well. But to wage war, there is first patriotism, there is logistics, there is now. It wouldn't have been possible a few years ago.
Why?
You have to know how to awaken patriotism in each people. Make them confident, knowing that their homeland is the only thing they have left. We managed to do that. That's why when we ask them to contribute, they do it. We ask people to enlist to fight for their position. Even today, if we decide that we want 1 million Burkinabé to fight the others,
Volunteer.
defend homeland.
Defense of homeland.
Yes. People are ready. They are committed.
Isn't it dangerous for them?
No, it's their homeland.
It's their homeland.
All over the world, people have fought for their homeland. And why?
Mr. President, when we say that, one tends to ask the question, this terrorism has been ongoing for a while in our territories, with armies that have come and extraordinary sums spent, with high-quality military arsenal so far. How do you explain that suddenly? You decide that the three of you will fight this without the others. Is it realistic? What makes it more feasible today than with those armies that were there?
It's more than realistic. There have been several situations. We have had the opportunity to be on the ground. Many other officers you might encounter have had the chance to be on the ground and have maneuvered with these foreign armies. On your own territory, you are given restrictions. They do whatever they want. What's even more surprising, imagine you said with all the technology they had, they might currently have satellites observing everything. They had drones, helicopters, all types of devices. But we never saw the terrorists. Today we have decided to wage war. But do you realize? We find them every day, and we whip them. So there is a problem.
For you, there wasn't a real willingness to fight them then?
No willingness to fight them?
Okay.
If they wanted to, they could do it. The terrorists would never have reached this level.
So today we say, if they are achieving results, if they are making some progress, it's because they have the Russians with them. There was Wagner, which we talked about. Today we even have the Russians who are going to open their first military base with Africa Corps. Mr. President, are the Russians helping you? And is their help better than that of the foreign armies that were present until now?
You know, as far as Burkina is concerned, for example, we have always been in contact with Russia. And I tell you, the equipment that the Burkinabe had, 80% of it was Russian equipment.
Oh, really?
Of course.
But yet you had a stronger military relationship with the French. How do you explain that?
Yes, because this equipment dates back to perhaps the years of the revolution. Of course, we have equipment dating back to the years of the revolution, which are still in use, Russian and Korean, North Korean equipment, which are still fighting in our army.
And are they more effective?
The army was neglected, don't forget that. Since the 1990s, with the so-called structural adjustment program, everything has been distorted. There were soldiers standing guard with sticks. We disarmed the army, our armies. It was well prepared. No more equipment, no more training, nothing. People were just wearing the uniform, and terrorism joined the dance a few years later, and it's broadcasted on all the media. They are unable to fight. We will come to help them, and terrorism is only gaining ground. Today with Russia, the relationship is primarily strategic. That I think you understand much better than we do. And with Russia, there isn't this equipment that we wish to pay for with them, that they don't sell. The others impose restrictions on us.
They tell you you cannot buy this type of weapon.
Of course.
Yet the Russians sell you everything you want.
Everything we want. Up to the moment I'm speaking to you, we are being blocked from licenses for certain aircraft. There are types of weapons they will never sell us.
And how do they explain these restrictions to you?
You know, I asked the question, where is the friendship? What do they want? There are many countries, the Russians, the Chinese, the Turks, the Koreans, and so on. There are no restrictions. With Iran, everything we want, they will accommodate us. If we can pay, we pay. But with these states that were supposedly our friends, there are restrictions. There are even some who have told us that they can't sell us anything lethal.
Oh, really? So you're at war and you can't kill the one in front of you?
Yes, the terrorist kills us. But we might have the duty to pick up stones. Maybe even the stone is lethal. Anything lethal, they won't sell to us. That's their principle.
So today with Russia, what are they getting in return? We know well that there is no friendship between states. It's always about interests. Everyone comes for their own interests. So today, there is a fear among some people that we've just swapped one master for another. However, I know you a little bit to know that you are not about replacing one master with another. What are you giving the Russians very concretely for them to be there? Are they taking minerals? How are you paying them? Are you selling a portion of the territory? What's the deal?
If the deal was really to leave one master for another, we would rather die. Because when we say the homeland or death, it has its full meaning. No, it's just media. Lies again. And unfortunately, we even saw heads of state who fell for it, who went on to spread lies. Supposedly that we gave mines to the Russians in our southern part. Completely false.
Nothing is given to the Russians.
Absolutely false.
Not even a mine?
Why give? If the Russians want a mine, we have the mining code. They come and integrate into it. We give them the permit, they pay taxes, and they do everything they have to do like everyone else.
But with what do you pay the Russians then? They don't come for your good looks.
Yes. With what do we pay them? First of all, when did the Russians arrive? In Burkina, the last time instructors came was because they need to train the military on the equipment. And it's the same with all countries, not just the Russians. When we sign a contract to acquire equipment, we sign the contract with the training included. There are plenty of Turks here. Why don't they talk about it?
Who are specialized in drones, rather?
We paid for drones with Turkey under an assistance contract. More than a year ago. The whole time we've been here, the Turks have been here. Why don't we talk about it? Why don't we talk about it? They are here, they support us. They have trained our teams, our crews in Turkey. They come here, they assist them, and they continue to train them in piloting, maintenance, and everything. We have the contract for a given period. When our men are well trained, they will leave. It's the Chinese, they are here. The equipment we buy from China, they are also here to train in the handling of that equipment. That's the reality.
But are they on the ground or not, the Russians?
On the ground to fight. No. There are no Russians on the ground to fight. These are things developed actually in people's minds. But if needed, they will come to the ground to fight. That I can assure you. If there is a need.
You don't forbid yourself that?
No. If there is a need.
Except now they aren't on ground.
No. For now, we are fighting alone. They support us. In terms of training, on logistics, tactical training and everything. They support us in this area.
So, I had asked the question before we digressed. On your current security record, because we have seen some movements of certain populations who are getting a bit impatient. And then, as you said, the people are very resilient, but at some point, enough is enough. So, what have you done so that the Burkinabe can say, no, President Traore arrived and he solved this or that internal problem for us?
As for that, we don't talk. I even told the Minister of Communication or others, I don't want us to talk too much about our reconquest. Let the villagers speak for themselves. There are several villages that have been resettled, schools that have opened in various areas. But often, saying that there is no progress, leads the villagers themselves to make videos, to tell people, that's false, you're lying. As for us, we left so many years ago, but we just arrived. We are safe. It was only recently that there have been some reports to truly confirm that people...
Have the displaced people returned home?
Who are even selling their market garden products today. That means they returned several months ago. They had time to cultivate, they did. Several schools have opened.
Because you went on the offensive or because of the VDP?
The offensive is with the VDP. Of course. You know, I was just talking about patriotism and logistics. It's the second aspect that was failing us. But listen, when you take, for example, the attack on Djibo last November, as soon as there was the attack, there was a response from the elements in Djibo and the aerial vectors. The next day, rapid intervention battalions moved towards Djibo with supplies and continued and marched on the Baraboulé base, the terrorist base of Baraboulé, where we hadn't been since 2019. It's from there that they prepare all the attacks, which are Baraboulé, Bou, up to the border at Petekoli. They marched on the terrorist bases. If there was no logistics, it would be impossible. We would sit down to plan the operation. It would already take a month, more than a month, to try to gather the logistics and the men. That's how it happened. And to gather the logistics, I'll share a secret with you. There were times during certain operations here when we borrowed weapons from neighboring countries, carried out the operation, cleaned up, and then returned them.
Yes.
But today, all of this gives us a very bad image. Today, as soon as there's an attack, the Rapid Intervention Battalion is told, you move, because they are fully equipped, ready for combat. We don't have a moment to lose. And immediately they take off and rush into combat. That's how it happens now. There are several battalions that are equipped and positioned all over the country. This is also the increase in power in terms of logistics and tactics.
Mr. President, when we see all this, with all the logistics you mentioned, with the Russians being brought in to inform, as you said, your troops, it costs a lot of money. Can the Burkinabe economy sustain this for long?
Very good question. It costs a lot of money. That's why I say our countries are not poor. There has been mismanagement. There is theft. The plundering of our resources. That's it. That's what it's about. I'll give an example. Today there is the Patriotic Support Fund. The population contributes and we mainly support. The volunteers for the defense of the homeland with it. But what about the rest of the army that we are equipping? All these resources we are acquiring, it's there. It's governance, finances. There are resources, we have potential. But if it's mismanaged, we are a book.
For you, do the countries have enough to sustain themselves by producing and just practicing good governance?
How do we manage to get material? It's not for our pretty eyes, as you say, that we're given things. We pay. But it's about management. There are situations we manage because in all departments, all ministerial sectors, everyone does their best to rationalize. And when we say rational, what does that mean? You know, there is this habit of corruption at a high level, of overbilling, because when someone runs for elections, especially here in Africa, it's like a business. They will finance it. That's the habit here. They distribute money so that people will vote for them. It's an investment. And as soon as they get in, they have to pay back to reimburse. We don't have that with us. We don't have accounts abroad. We have nothing. We don't want any. Everything is directed towards the war. If you look at the oil sector, you know that the state subsidizes petroleum products, gasoline, diesel, so that Burkinabés pay less for it. In 2022, for example, the subsidies were around 400, almost 500 billion. 400 and some, the state pays.
500 billion CFA francs.
In 2023, we are at less than 100 billion in subsidies.
Does that mean you saved 400 billion in subsidies?
How do you explain that? We were free too, when people make their proposals, to tell the company, Sonabi, okay, such and such a person will make a proposal at such a price. But you take it at this price and the rebates you give us. We go open our offshore accounts and put it in there. That's how it happens.
And they hold you from that moment on, when you have opened accounts abroad?
Of course, if you mess around, we will manage your accounts. We don't have an account. So, everything is geared towards war. These savings, it's the equipment.
Mr. President, there has been a long discussion about how long you will stay. When will you organize elections? How long will the transition last? Do you have an answer to that today? Or do you think it's not a priority for you? Until when will Captain Ibrahim Traore be in charge and organize elections to leave his position?
I was going to ask you a question in return before answering you.
But I'm not here to answer questions, Mr. President.
It's a debate, and it's a pleasure. If today, in 6 months, we decided to abandon the people, you, as a very objective man, aware of our situation, what would you say? What would be your comment?
Honestly, I prefer to abstain, even if you know what I really think.
All right? It's to tell you that it's tiring often. It's tiring. But the only thing that keeps us going is the love of the people. We are nourished there. We are quenched there. Since we've been here, we haven't taken a single day off. In any case, the entire executive.
Politicians say, for us, it's our job, since some have made it their profession. We want to return to democracy. We want to return to parliament with elected people. We want to let the people speak. What do you tell them? That we will stay like this, or that we will establish a new model that might put everything back on track?
Where did they learn this profession? We do not want people to learn this profession elsewhere and want to apply it here. We want to create a model, because the way of doing things here is not the right way. As I tell you, first, there are many agreements that you see we are in the process of denouncing. Many others are to come. Yes. The revolution in this area has not started yet. That's why I say that our economies will know how to behave very well. People sign agreements for their own interests. As I said, these are investments. Unfortunately, African heads of state, those who engage in this realm of political careers, have not always understood. I think that despite hearing many lessons from figures like Bokassa and others, they continue to plunder their country's resources, to invest them elsewhere. How can we give? I don't know how I will explain. It's inconceivable.
But for you, Mr. President, today, is it not a question of discussing the organization of elections, the end of the transition?
Yes? How are we going to organize the elections? At the precise moment.
So everything needs to be reconsidered?
No, except for the system that is in place. It needs to be reviewed The elections concern all of Burkina Faso. Do you think they are ready today to go to Soleil, to go to Falanguntu to campaign? But they are Burkinabe. They must vote.
2. First make peace.
There must be a minimum level of security so that if there is a campaign, people can go everywhere in Burkina, explain their ideas to the Burkinabe people, and the people will choose because it's no longer about distributing money. There will be reforms on the electoral code. That's over. If you are caught doing that, you will be disqualified. Well, I'm not going to get ahead of Ukraine in the water, but it's to tell you that there are reforms coming. This way of doing things, of buying consciences, is over. Our mission is to awaken consciences so that people never accept this again. If you think you can govern the country, you explain your political program. What are you going to do? And maybe, after a while, the people will evaluate whether you should continue your mandate or not. In short, we won't say everything, but there will be reforms in the electoral field so that people can hold elections. All Burkinabés must vote.
Mr. President, I return to the AES, which is something important for you as you make it a key focus in this war. What are the relations with the other heads of state of Niger and Mali? Can we consider an expansion of this AES even to states that are not in the Sahel?
The possibility of expanding, and I'll start with that, is possible. In the Charter, it exists. So we have made an opening. But the relations between us are fraternal. It's what we dreamed of for Africa. That's what is currently there.
Do you share the same vision for Africa? Because sometimes people are jealous of their prerogatives in their country.
No, we share the same vision, and we carry out the same mission. And if you look through the communications, everything we do is to awaken consciousness. Why would the head of state want his people to wake up? Others tend to want the people to stay asleep so they can continue doing what they want. We want the people to wake up so that even after us, they will never again allow individuals to put them in those conditions. So, whether in Niger or Mali, here, if you notice in our communication, it's always about making people understand what happened before. And today, how we managed to break the chains of slavery a little. So that's it. We need to ensure that everyone breaks the chains of slavery. And that's our communication. And it's very important. That's a vision. Secondly, regarding our self-determination. To achieve food self-sufficiency, there are many things being developed in our regions. For example, when we consider crops like wheat. In fact, when it was said that it couldn't be done in our regions, we are now doing it on a large scale. In Mali, they are doing it on a large scale. Niger is in the process. There are many other crops that we are experimenting with. The message is to make our populations understand that we don't need to import. We can produce everything for ourselves here and even export.
Produce and export within the AES. Mr. President, aren't you afraid for yourself today?
Afraid?
We lived through the period of Thomas Sankara, who is somewhat your model, as many compare you to him, through your ideas, your behavior, and your choices. We know how that ended.
Yes, you are right. And it's the question everyone asks. And it's actually the phobia of the Burkinabe people. When they think about it, they are always afraid for me. For myself, I am not afraid. Fear, we do not know it. We have faced death several times. We have been close to it. We do not know. God has made it so that we are alive. We give thanks to God. So fear, we do not know it. But we have analyzed the past. In certain aspects, perhaps, President Thomas Sankara made mistakes. When he said, for example, let friends betray friendship, it is not up to us to betray friendship. I think that phrase prevailed.
For you, he should have been on the offensive.
We will no longer make the same mistakes. That is certain. And imperialism, as he said, is a very bad student. When it is driven out, it returns with the same methods. We are vigilant, so we will not let the same mistakes happen again.
Today, Mr. President, what are your relations with France and with the European Union?
We don't have any special relationships. I say, international relations are what they are. It happens as it should happen, if I may say. There's nothing malicious. In any case, Burkina is asserting its sovereignty. Any country or organization that respects that, we have a good relationship with. But when you don't want to, that's when you want to dictate to us what we should do.
But you still talk to each other, right?
Of course. We talk to each other. The European Union recently, we received the new ambassador. I know you followed that. He is here, he is working, there's no problem. The French embassy is also still here. They continue their activities.
And the Americans?
They are here.
So there's no issue on that side. The cooperation continues, but...
As long as we respect our ideological line, as long as we respect our sovereignty, as long as we respect the fact that we want to break our chains and be independent.
So that gives me the opportunity to conclude on that note. We know that ECOWAS does not agree with the exit, saying, well, for us, we have learned again. I know that the letter was addressed to them. Do you still accept negotiation? Is it conceivable that tomorrow you might say, okay, we understand, we'll come back if you return to better sentiments? Or is it over, and we will never talk about it again?
We must not make certain mistakes, I just told you. Our path is a point of no return. Everything we do, when we decide to, that is, the chains we are breaking, it's forever.
So no more ECOWAS ever again?
No, it's over.
If we get into this, and this is my last question, if we get into this, it also means that in some time you will tackle the currency, which is the CFA.
Probably. Let things come as they may.
It's almost inevitable, isn't it, Mr. President?
You know, in everything we do, it surprised you, didn't it? Things might surprise you again. It's not just about the currency. Everything that is a bond, that keeps us in slavery. We will break those bonds.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
You're welcome.